Welcome back to the Imaginary Gallery. TJ, your host. I'm covering another section of Without Conscience, Robert D. Hare PhD's book, talking about crime, the logical choice. In Fritz Lang's classic 1931 movie, M, Peter Lorre played a child molester/murderer who snatches his unlucky victims off the street as the impulse hits him. Police are unable to find this killer, and the underworld of criminals takes on the job itself. Once it tracks down its prey, the seedy, creepy outlaw mob drags him to a deserted brewery, tries and convicts him in its own underworld court. This movie was one of the most effective dramatizations ever of the notion of honor among thieves. Is there honor among thieves, he asks. Scratch the surface of the average prison inmate and you'll find some kind of moral code. Not necessarily the code that mainstream society follows, but a moral code nevertheless, with its own rules and its own proscriptions. These creatures, although at odds with some of the rules and values of a society at large, may still follow the rules of their group, a neighborhood, an extended family, or a gang. So, to be a criminal does not mean to be without conscience, or even to be weakly socialized. Criminals come to crime in a variety of ways, most of them entailing outside forces. Some criminals learn to do their crimes. They're raised in families or live in social environments in which criminal behavior, to one degree or another, is the accepted norm. One of the author's subjects, for example, had a father who was a professional thief and a mother who was a hooker. From an early age, he went to work with his father. More dramatic examples of these subcultural criminals include the mafia families and bands of gypsies common in some parts of Europe. Some criminals can be understood as largely the products of what's known as a cycle of violence. Evidence is coming up to show that victims of early sexual, physical, or emotional abuse frequently become perpetrators of the very same thing as adults. It's not uncommon, for example, to find that child molesters were themselves molested, or for wife assaulters to have witnessed domestic violence at an early age with its own parents. Still, others run afoul of the law because of a powerful need, for example, a drug addict or people without skills or resources who buck their consciences and turn to robbery out of desperation. Many of the subjects in his research began their criminal activities as refugees from broken, abusive, or impoverished homes. They turned to drugs to comfort themselves or to relieve themselves, and to crime to support their habit. Others wound up as offenders by committing crimes of passion. One of their subjects was a 40-year-old man without a criminal record or history of any kind of violence, found some condoms in his wife's purse, got into a heated argument with her, and then went crazy and severely beat her. He received a sentence of 2 years, but he's certainly to get an early parole. For many of these individuals, negative social factors, poverty, violence, family violence, child abuse, poor parenting, economic stress, alcohol, drug abuse, to name a few, but were contributors to, or even the cause of, their criminality. Indeed, had these factors not been present, many of these criminals would not have turned to crime. But some individuals commit crime simply because it pays. It's much easier than having to work. Or it can be exciting. Not all are cluster B creature or psychopaths, but for those who are, crime is less the result of an adverse social condition than of a character structure that operates with no reference to the rules or regulations of our society. Typical of many of his creature subjects, when asked why they committed a crime, a female in one of their studies said,
"You want the truth? Just for the fun of it."
Unlike most other criminals, psychopaths show no loyalty to groups, codes, or principles, other than to look out for number one. Law enforcement agencies often make use of this when trying to solve a crime or to break up a gang or terrorist group. To say, be smart, save your own skin, tell us who else was involved and you walk, is more likely to pay off with a psychopath than with any other ordinary criminal.
I am the Narcopath.
Don't go asking me about love, 'cause I ain't got a clue. I just know it's the word I use to get what I want from you. I have no clue what love is. I said I did, but that was for your benefit. People like you seem to like such words, so I used them. When you asked me what I loved about you, I didn't really know what to say. I kind of just told you what I knew about you because I have no clue what love is. But you fell for it, at least for a while.
Oh yes, I remember you telling me how insecure you were about your family, which is why you allowed me to meet your parents. But when it came to your brothers and sisters, you were reluctant to do it. Well, I assured you that
I'm just like you, that my older sister used to attract all the boys I'd bring home from school that I wanted to make love to, and she'd end up with them. And I told you I was just like that, even though I made the whole thing up. I patterned it off your story, so you wonder why a few months later, after all these lengthy discussions, after we had to be with the whole family, and you found out I disappeared for several hours. You heard I was seen with your brother and with your sister for a short while. That really drove you crazy. You were talking about how could I do such a thing since I've been through the same thing and I should know how horrible it feels. Well, honey, I didn't go through it. I made that up to look like I was just like you. I loved having fun with your brother and your sister. I'd like to have had them together, but you didn't need to know any of this because I was working you for a different purpose. It's none of your business what I did with your siblings. Maybe if you learn to mind your own business, you'll have a relationship that lasts forever like the one I'm about to start with.
I know I never told you, but I kind of have a fetish. I love to destroy families.
I love to break them apart, which usually involves some version of me seducing the brother, or the father, or the mother, or the sister. It depends. Now you know why or how I could have done such a thing. I made up that story. I've never had any of that done. In fact, I don't even have a sister. I made it all up and you bought it.
Well, honey, that's your problem. You're too gullible. Not my problem.
And let's not forget, I remember you thought you could trust me because I had you convinced. You actually revealed that you were insecure about the size of your private parts. You did mention, not realizing I was listening for such things, about how when you were kids, you and your brother were showering near each other and you happened to notice his hung down like a horse. Honey, that got my attention. Do you recall I just said to you, oh, well, I don't care about that. I'm happy with yours. Well, honey, that's why I snuck off with your brother, because I wanted to see that horse meat. I wanted to feel it inside, and I did. I knew how sensitive you were about it. Did that stop me? I just didn't tell you, and I told him to lie, and I lied. And now you know. Your brother and I were getting it on that night that I told you I was hurt and crying because it was my period. That was a lie. I was in your brother's bedroom, humping up and down. It's true. He provided a much fuller experience than you did, if you know what I mean. It's not your fault, you can't help it. I needed what he had, and you led me to it. So you have yourself to blame for that. You shouldn't have told me the size of his private parts, because I'm what they call a size queen. I like them huge. The bigger, the better. Like Knockworth. Of course, I had to downplay all that and hide it, and told you, I don't care what the size is. It's not the size that counts. It's how you use it. Even though you could barely use it and had to use a toy along with it, but I didn't complain. I said, oh, that's perfectly fine. Well, honey, it wasn't. And you didn't need to know, because I thought that I could have a future with you because of the money I knew you were coming into. I could use that for my new breast implant, and you ruined the whole thing by spying on me, so you have yourself to blame. You could have had me the rest of your life.
I'm not telling you all this to be mean. I just thought I should let you know how it works.
I think that we should get together again. Oh, I promised I wouldn't play my normal games. Those are over. They're a thing of the past. Don't you remember this body? You used to lick it every inch. Don't you want to taste it again? Just kidding. I've got someone else. How dare you? Oh, it's over. And your little pea winkle won't work for me. And you blew it. And I blew your brother. Your big brother.